lost my best friend to 23. I lost my best friend to
We like to think we have some form of control still, making our constant binary choices and voicing our equally shallow opinions more loudly or quietly. Most people can't even decide what color to wear or which burger to eat. What does it matter, man? Autonomy is an illusion. Autonomy is an illusion. Autonomy is an illusion. Most people can't even decide what color to wear or which burger to eat. What does it matter, man? Autonomy is an illusion. Autonomy is an illusion. Autonomy is an illusion.
Hey everybody, happy, what day is it? It's Tuesday, right? Yeah, happy Tuesday. Hope you are doing well. We are at the end of the semester, my goodness. This has flown by so fast. I appreciate you hanging in there with me. I think we've gotten to all of our objectives. Unit tests, integration testing, stub procedures, top-down, bottom-up integration testing, trade-off considerations for data design implementation, design software that's easily modifiable, it's all about object-oriented, implement algorithms using linked lists, stacks, and queues, insert various sorting algorithms, sure, I mean, like, built-in sorts, fine. Existing class libraries, yes, we did that all the time. Create libraries of related classes to solve real-world problems, sure, our own classes and things, yep. Data abstraction, data hiding, functions, and inheritance, yep. We did not get to the Unix lab, unfortunately. We did not have lab in person on campus. to do any of the Unix stuff, unfortunately. Feeling a little bad about that now, but it's not too tricky, I promise. All we do is we log into Unix and run some Unix commands. So it's nothing super exciting that we really get to. Excuse me. And then a medium-sized program as part of a team. Again, the team bit was optional here given the pandemic. So, and why is K bold? Like all the other ones are not bold. K's bold weirdly. Okay. So we're doing great. So the last thing we have today, again, we switched up ethics for the final project work time due to Comcast coming out, which I think they've mostly fixed my issue. Apparently the line that runs into my house, there's like a connector between their line and the line that runs inside my house. It was down at a low point and water was pooling inside of it and kind of rusting out the little connector. So he put a new connector in and then he tied the cable up better so that the water will drip not into that thing. And hopefully that'll be a little bit better. It seems to be more stable, so that's a good sign. So we're going to talk a little bit about ethics today, and then we'll get to any last questions on the final project. And again, the goal here is we're going to be presenting on our final exam slot. Let me double check that date. Dearborn schedule, just to double check. I believe it's correct, but let's see what we got here. The final exam schedule. We want the online only. I think that was us, right? I think it was online only. Let's see what we get here. All right. Yeah, the CIS is all up first there. Look at that. That's fancy. 2001. Huh. They have it on the 28th. Or the 27th. Why did I think it was the 28th? Okay. I'm okay with either date for you folks. Yeah, that's just weird. Not really sure. Huh. I'm sorry, maybe that had changed since previously? I'm really confused now. Because we're online only, that was it. There's no in-person only, right? Definitely not in this list. Let me just double check that. I didn't like mess this up here. Yeah, definitely not in that list. So you want to do, we can do the 27th because that's what's in the calendar if you want, or we can stick to the 28th, which is what we had in the syllabus. Let me know, because this is supposed to be designed so you don't have overlap, but if you end up with overlap, let me know and we'll go from there, because I want to have you guys present your games, your blackjack simulators, and we can take a look at it and see the data that you get and what kind of strategy you got to give you the most winnings, or the least losings, perhaps. Okay, so let me know. Another thing, after we talk about that, ethics, don't forget there is the class survey in Canvas. It probably asks you every time you log into Canvas. So please take a minute. That is due tonight, and after tonight you can't respond anymore. So it is anonymous, right? I get these results after the fact. I'll show you real quick. I think I might have even showed you before, but we'll take a look here and see. So like here was the 2020 fall 1501 results. Let's see that one here. Yep. So this is what I get. Right? I get just the scores here, and anything that was free text. Right? I get, here's just the text stuff after the fact. Okay? So it is anonymous. I do submit all of this stuff as part of my evaluation process, so I would appreciate if you took a minute to fill that out for me. That would be super helpful, and we could go from there. Okay, you got an exam 3 to 6 on the 27th? Yeah, I mean, I had it in the 28th on the syllabus, so I won't plan on moving it unless people tell me that the 28th is terrible all of a sudden for them. Otherwise, we'll just leave it as the 28th, because that was the date in here. Okay? And I think that's what I've been planning to schedule. So we'll plan to get together on a Zoom call, and we can all take turns sharing screens, showing off our final games. There's not very many of us left, so we'll start at 6 p.m. I imagine it'll take less than an hour or so. Rumble, I had to get motivation to work every day. I enjoy what I do. I think it's a lot of fun to do some of this stuff. I don't enjoy the grading, to be honest. which is finally up to date. I'm so sorry for all the delays there. So all of your grades for everything except the final project are in Canvas. If you have any objections, please let me know. I'm happy to look at it. I'm not perfect. I definitely make mistakes. So please object to me sooner rather than later, when we can take a look at it and figure that part out, okay? All right. We're good so far. So we'll plan on the 28th unless someone can't make it. Or maybe I can just individually meet with them otherwise. Or you can even send me a recording if we have to. I just want to see your final project, how it works, and have you talk about it. That's part of the fun. And the beauty of that is I can evaluate it right then and there if it works. Right? If you've done everything, you're going to get 100% full points. Easy. You present it, you get your full score, you're good to go. If it doesn't completely work, then we have to take a little more time, dig in a little deeper, and do a little more analysis on the scoring there. But other than that, it's relatively easy to score, and then you'll have your final grade shortly, which is really cool. Okay? All right, awesome. So let's talk about ethics then, if we don't have any other questions. And you go from there. So there is a really cool, where is it? I have to Google it now. It's software here. Code of Ethics. I never remember which group it's from. There's like an ACM one and there's a IEEE one. Yeah, here's the ACM one, the Software Engineering Code of Ethics from the ACM, which is a very well-respected organization. This is awesome. So they have a long version and a short version. So their short version here is amazing. I don't want to read it all to you here, but the highlights here, right? So the idea is that our ethics will compel us to act in a certain way. That means we don't do dumb things and bad things and illegal things. That's essentially it. So what we do is we say we will act in the interest of the public. Now, this doesn't mean like we have to put them first and we have to give away all the money and all this sort of thing, but we don't do things that hurt the public. Okay, I'm looking at certain corporations when I look at this. In regards to client and employer, you shall act in a manner that is in the best interest of their client and employer, consistent with the public interest. Right? So we're not doing things like overcharging, right? Because that's not in the best interest of our client or our employer. Overcharging, we're not stealing things, right? We're acting in an ethical manner. Right? The product. I like this one here. This one's super important. We ensure that our products and related modifications meet the highest professional standards possible. Now, highest is actually a little difficult here. This is kind of a tough pill to swallow. Let me zoom this in a little bit for you. In that, the highest standards, does that mean I need to have 100% unit tests no matter what, and I'm going to die on that hill? Not necessarily. Right? We understand there are diminishing returns to unit tests, and it's not you must have them completely 100% black or white. Right? There's a level of which the investment in unit testing will give you returns on the quality. And at some point, you start getting less quality returns for more investment. So in the best interest of your employer, right, if it's going to take you an extra 40 hours, another work week, to add 10% more unit tests, and you might catch maybe one issue if you're lucky, maybe that's not in the best interest there. So the highest possible standards, also related to making sure we're working appropriately on the right things, solving the right problems, not wasting our time on things. We should maintain integrity and independence in your professional judgment. This one's really cool, right? Is that our judgment should not be based on something else, right? We need to have integrity when we say this is a good idea, this is a bad idea. This we should not do with software, right? Depending on what it is, sure. There's been a lot of talk around AI and organizations doing business with our Department of Defense or not. And there's been a lot of pushback at some organizations from their engineering staff to say, no, we don't want to give artificial intelligence tools to the military. We think these are not good things to do and to pursue. So that's having integrity and independence in your judgment there is all about that. For management, I love this one that it's in here. So if you move up into the management ranks, managers and leaders shall subscribe to and promote an ethical approach to management of software development and maintenance. looking at specifically managers and leaders, making sure we're doing this ethically. There was some big pushback recently. Who is that? The group who put out Cyberpunk 2077 or whatever? I forget the name of their company already. But they had gotten a lot of flack because they came out and said, we're not going to force people to work overtime. And then it ends up they went back on their word and said, oh yeah, we're going to force people to work overtime. But don't worry, we're going to pay them for it. There's some balancing there, right? At some point, getting a working product out the door is important. And maybe you need to mandate a little overtime. But an ethical approach to it, right? Making sure we're compensating people fairly, we're having good expectations, right, and not abusing people. That's terrible. The profession itself, which is really cool, to say that we shall advance the integrity and reputation of the profession consistent with the public interest. Don't write malware. Don't be a jerk. Don't steal people's money. Right? There's actually a really interesting article. I think I posted it in our Discord. Someone got a bug report and they thought there's something wrong with their application that they couldn't copy paste if this weird thing happened. Like it just screwed up the clipboard, and they went through this whole process. And it turns out the user had malware on their computer that if you copy something that looks like it might be a Bitcoin address, it's going to replace it in the clipboard with the malware's address so they can steal your money. Which project, Sammy? Need a better organization? The Cyberpunk? Yeah, I didn't actually hear much about it until it made the news for getting pushed back, and they're saying we're not going to release it till it's good, and we're not going to mandate overtime, and then they did mandate overtime, and they released it before it was good. That was, I don't know. I don't really understand all of that. But, I heard the game was fun, an interesting open world concept, and some people seem to enjoy it, but, all right. For the profession, right? Integrity, reputation of the profession. Right? I hate hackers because they make everyone look down at us and be like, oh, you're dirty. That's horrible. We don't want that to happen to our profession. We want software engineering to be looked upon as a respected profession that people can trust. We can write software that's going to work and do the right thing. Your colleagues, you should be fair and supportive of your colleagues. And self, you should participate in lifelong learning regarding the practice of their profession and promote an ethical approach to the practice of the profession. Most developers that I know are lifelong learners, almost all of them. Because if you're not learning, you're not going to be able to keep up with the changes in the industry anyway. So it's a great industry to be in if you're into learning all the time. And it doesn't mean we always need to be on the cutting edge, learning the latest and greatest thing, and then throwing it away a year later when something new comes along, right? But we're still lifelong learners. Although if you learned COBOL, you can make a lot of money supporting legacy COBOL systems, apparently. So they have an actual long version here, which is really cool. And it goes into more details around your colleagues. So assisting them in professional development, fully crediting them for their work, reviewing in an objective, candid, properly documented way, fair hearings to the opinions and complaints. Right? This one I like. If you're not good at it, ask other people. Right? If you don't know how to do something, or if you're not really good at it and they need it to be done well, ask for people who actually know that thing. Right? Admit when you don't know it. I forget where I heard the term, but a while ago I came upon a term called humble pie. And the idea is that you should be ready to eat your humble pie. Take a bite of your humble pie, admit you don't know something, and that's okay, and ask for help with it. Right? No one knows everything. Right? You don't want to be the person that accepts all these assignments and doesn't really know how to do it, and then a bad product comes out because of it. Right? And really nothing worse happens in the industry than when someone says everything's fine, they got it, and a couple weeks later, about when it's due, it turns out, oh, they haven't been able to get anything working, and now the project is 3 weeks behind. Right? That just, it ruins it for everybody if you are hiding what isn't getting done. And that's one of the ideas with software development methodology, and to report out statuses and be open with your team and things like that. There's all sorts of good stuff to it. Yeah, so the details are great. I'll post this link here. We usually do a lab exercise, but we got off with the labs, and I wasn't able to talk about this Thursday due to Comcast issues, so there was no lab on Monday about it, and I'm not going to have a later lab. But you could look at this. It's a Grayball project at Uber, Project Grayball at Uber. And this actually has a really interesting history, and I think makes for a really good case study in ethics. Okay, so what it did is it was initially designed for people violating the terms of service, people seeking to harm Uber drivers, disrupt the operations. This last one here, a little bit, to carry out law enforcement actions against Uber. That's where it got to be bad. But what happened in Europe, if you read there was like a New York Times article you can find. You probably have to be logged in through the college library, though, to get the free access. Is that the cab drivers groups would call for an Uber, and they'd all wait for the person to show up, and then they'd beat them. So Project Grayball sprung out of the need to protect their drivers from these people from actually physically assaulting them. Great, fantastic. That's a good use case. Don't let your drivers get hurt. Fully support that. Then what they started doing, though, is then they would start using it to block law enforcement. When we found out, the city doesn't actually want us working here because we haven't gone through the proper permitting process and haven't gotten approved. So one of the things they could do is look for a credit card database. And if a credit card associated with your account was linked to a government agency or a police union, or a credit union sort of thing, you'd get flagged and you would not get a ride. So if you're trying to use it and give people tickets for driving for Uber when they're not allowed in your city, they just block them. So now they're starting to actively circumvent law enforcement. And as a developer, if you've subscribed to the Code of Ethics, that starts to be a real fuzzy area there, right? Is this in the interest of the public to let your organization evade law enforcement? And I would have a hard no, that is not ethical stand there. And then Uber just is a terrible place to work based on a lot of the reporting and nastiness that happened back there. Anyway, yep, so if you open Uber and never call for a ride, right, it thinks you must be trying to track drivers, some sort of thing. So this was pretty bad. And they, got a lot of flack for this. It's sort of blown over since then, but Uber definitely is a very gray area, I think, for some of the things that they've done. And that's why we need engineers who have ascribed to a code of ethics, who have independence in their judgment and say, no, this is bad. We should not do this thing. We should not make our software do this. So that's kind of interesting. So that's what we usually would do for a lab. Look at that. There's all sorts of cool slides out there already. Amazing. For our code of ethics. IEEE has its own code of ethics as well, but it's essentially the same. Is that the IEEE? Yeah, IEEE. Oh yeah, it's the joint ACM and IEEE. That's why it is. So same code of ethics there as well. And ethics can be hard, right? A lot of it tends to be a gray area. Well, I think, in my opinion, this is right or this is wrong. So having some sort of standard to go back to and say, no, this is the codified standard here that we're going to ascribe to is super helpful. Because everyone develops their ethics from different places. And all sorts of good slides around it. Look at that, version 5.2. And some decisions, right, are really resource-based. So as an engineer, if we're writing something like self-driving software for vehicles, which seems to be really hot in the news, what do we do? And everyone loves to look at this trolley problem. Trolley problem game. Where is it here? It's the moral machine. That's what it's called. Moral machine. This was, I think it's through MIT, right? Moral machine. And people love to throw this out there as, hey, what should we do with self-driving vehicles? How should we instruct the car to do? So should the car take an action and kill the pedestrians, assuming the brakes, right? So we show the description. In case of a sudden brake failure, it can't stop. It will either crash into the barricade or crash into the pedestrians. Do we take an action to protect the passengers? Or do we take no action? Take an action to protect the passengers and kill the pedestrians who are legally crossing here? Or do we take no action and allow the accident to happen and kill the passengers? Right? So we can say, which one do we think is better? And they even tell you, oh, hey, there's a doctor and an executive and children. right? Versus, oh, some children, doctor. So it's the same people in the car versus not in the car. Right? So some people will say, oh, well, we should weigh the loss of life, so the number of lives. Well, it's the same in this case. Or some people will say, well, we should not take action that causes more harm. Right? If we just say, oh, well, the brakes failed, it's going to crash into the barricade, everyone will die. That's, in some cases, people think is better than making an action that, in this case, our software would have to make the decision to save the passengers and kill the pedestrians if that happened. Right? If the car is empty, do we kill the people crossing illegally, jaywalking, or do we swerve and kill less people who are walking legally? Right? Are we prioritizing the amount of life saved, or are we saying, again, we should take no action and let the accident happen as is? Right? Because depending on what we think we should do, we need to write the software to say, hey, if it cannot brake and stop, how do we determine which is the best course of action? Right? So there's no one in the car. Right? So either take no action or take an action and kill less people. Now in this case, I think it's the same thing, but they're crossing when they shouldn't be crossing versus crossing when they are crossing. Oh, there's a large woman instead of an athlete in this case. Like our car could tell that. Again, take no action or take an action. We're still killing the same number of people. This one is, do we take no action, right, and kill the people crossing, or do we take an action and kill the passengers? Again, depending on what you think. And again, you just get a pick, and then when we're done here, action, kill the dogs. Yeah, kill the pets. All right, fine, kill the pets. And like they can, apparently you can tell it's a bank robber. Excuse me. Kill kids or kill old people. Fat men or athletes, I think is the large men or athletes here. I mean, what do we want it to do? Again, you just go through it, and then they give you a really cool thing at the end here. Would you like to help us better understand? Yes. Aha. How much? Oh, yeah. Okay, here we go. So, how willing are we to buy a car? To the extent you fear the machine will become out of control, and more machines will be programmed self-driving cars. Can we trust machines? Our education, income, to learn all these things about it. But here's when we voted here, when we picked, it's telling us, hey, do we have a preference on whether or not they were crossing at a red when they shouldn't have been crossing and they were jaywalking, or if they were crossing legally, right? Like if the car's out of control, should we go through where people shouldn't be walking even if they are? That's generally probably a better choice to aim for they shouldn't be crossing side. But again, that's sort of a silly case here. Do we have social value? Do we care if they're robbers or doctors? I don't remember doing that one myself, but sure, they must think I like the doctors better than the robbers. Protecting passengers. Do we prioritize keeping the passengers safe or protecting pedestrians? Do we care about species, humans or pets? Yes, we definitely value human life more than pets. Do we have a fitness preference? Should we value fit people more than large people, or young people versus old people? Or avoiding intervention? This one I think is a really interesting ethical discussion, right? Like if we're going to, it's easier to say, let's not intervene in case of brake failure and just let what's going to happen if there's the same value of life. It's like saving more lives. We'll say if we can identify, yes, this will save more lives, we should do it. Again, does your car know that it's going to kill all the passengers or all the pedestrians will die? No. So again, it's different. A gender preference? Oh dear. But avoiding intervention if possible, right? But still saving more lives. I think it's better to not act than it is to make the decision to say, yes, let's do this thing. But that's just one take on it here, which is really interesting. Age preference, we don't care. Fitness preference, we don't care. Species preference, yes. Should we always protect the passengers and just kill more pedestrians because it saves the passengers? Maybe. Social value, upholding the law. Do we care if they're jaywalking or not? I mean, maybe. Do we go for the other intersection where they shouldn't be because it's clearer? It's hard to tell. So there's some interesting work here in the Moral Machine. Just kind of goes through and they have a lot of fun with it. You can set up your own scenarios here. You can design them and then give it a title, and you can submit it for work. Right? Pedestrians versus pedestrians, pedestrians versus passengers, passengers versus pedestrians. Right? And you can go in and set up the scenario yourself. Right? Who's in the lane crossing? Old people, young people, cats, dogs, robbers, these sort of things. Who's that? Killed in this outcome, injured, uncertain outcome. So you can do a lot of fun stuff with the moral machine, and it gets to be a very interesting scenario. But again, if we're ascribing to the code of ethics, right, we're going to say, well, what is in the best interest of the public? What is in the best interest of my client, my employer, of the profession, of my colleagues? And it can be a little gray. It's not always, hey, this is the right decision. This is the better decision, or we can support our decision this way. And then other times, it comes down to how much money do we want to spend? If it's going to make the car 10% safer to spend another $50,000 on sensors, right? We can put sensors everywhere instead of just the limited ones that we have. Hey, Science Streams, thanks for dropping by. Is it fair to say we should increase the cost, double, triple the cost of a car to make it 10% safer? And that's really difficult to say. Like, hey, what is the cost-benefit analysis of saving a life, right? If we know that this percentage of cars get into accidents, and if we outfit cars with extra safety features, airbags didn't used to be required. That didn't used to be a standard feature in vehicles because they were expensive. But at some point we made the decision to say, yes, we will spend that extra money because it will save more lives. So there's always this cost-benefit analysis, but unfortunately there's limited money. There's not unlimited money, so we can't put everything into the vehicles to make them the safest thing ever. Right? We just can't. Same with our roads, right? There's highway dividers that go between the highways because they found that preventing a car from crossing into the oncoming traffic saves lives. But they cost money to build. We can't build unlimited dividers. Right? It would be the safest option to have single lanes with dividers, right? Because that way no one can veer out of their lane to crash into anybody else. But with our limited resources, we don't build roads like that. Right? We don't have dividers everywhere. So there's some amount of accepting some risk that goes into it. And we need to say, well, what's the right way to allocate our limited resources here? So ethics are fun. They can not always right answers. I can fairly say that there's definitely wrong answers, but not always right or easy answers. And then it's a fun discussion, but I would encourage you to read the Code of Ethics here. Consider ascribing to it yourself, adhering to the principles. Again, there's no penalty if you don't, but we want to have something to come back to look at and say, well, this is why I made this decision. Right? If I'm going to go work for an oil company, is it within the public interest to do that? And some people have strong opinions about that, and they don't want to work for oil companies, although they're starting to get into more renewable resources, and maybe you can change things better from the inside if you maintain your integrity and independence and your professional judgment, maybe. Right? So I'm not going to go tell someone they shouldn't go work there just because the oil companies are causing issues, right? And have been funding anti-climate change research and all sorts of nasty stuff like that. Again, some of it's up to you, for sure, right? And what you're comfortable with, if what you can say was in the public interest, right? Best interest of your client and your employer, sure. All right, and it's actually pretty short today. Do we have any other questions about the final project? If not, we can wrap it up, and then we'll meet back up on the 28th at 6 to go over your projects. It's been quite a semester. It's been a lot of fun. All right, so to develop your results in turn to create your strategy sheet. So like what you want to do when you're looking at all the random runs that we did the very first time, we want to find the least losing option. So you're not always going to have a winning option. Right? We're not saying this will guaranteed make you money, but this choice, either standing or taking a hit or getting another card, will give you the least likely loss. So that is the best option there. Does that make sense? So when we run the 100,000 simulations, we're just saying, hey, randomly hit. So 50% of the time hit, 50% of the time stand, and record your action and the result. So when I stood 50 times, I lost. and when I stood 5 times, I won. Well, what's better? Well, winning 5 times or losing 50 times? Well, it sounds like you lose a lot with that one. Well, when I hit, what happens? If I hit, well, 20 times I busted, but 50 times I won. So we're comparing which one of those loses the least, essentially, or wins the most. But again, like your winning percentage is never going to be super high there. So we want to say, so given my 2 cards, right, I have a king and a 3. So my hand total is 13. And again, you can do it just by total. You don't need to care if it's king and 3 or queen and 3 or jack and 3 or 10 and 3. Just do your hand total is 13. And then we're going to say, okay, I've got 2 options. So with a starting hand total of 3, when the dealer's card is a 2, when the dealer's card is a 3, when the dealer's card is a 4. So we're going to have the range of dealer cards for each one of my hand totals. Right, and that's how we kind of get this blackjack strategy page here. Right, we get my hand total referenced with the dealer's face-up card. What happens? So if I have an 18 to 21, or an 18 or a 19 or 20, 21, if I hit at 21, it's almost a guaranteed loss. It's possible you had an ace and you get a different card, but essentially you're going to lose almost all the time, right? So the least losing option there is to stand, right? And for 17 as well, right? Because at best, right? Yeah, increment the 1 or not for each of the hit options or stands. Yep, so again, based on your total. So we want to have some sort of collection of your hand totals and the dealer's cards, whether or not you want to make that a 2-dimensional list, or if you want to make it a dictionary with another thing inside of it, or you can use an actual object, right? We can write a class for hand result, right? Any way we want to slot those into some way of storing them, great. And, if we're thinking about the performance of certain things, right, we know dictionaries are really fast, but we need to make sure we can get a good hash out of it. So if your hand total just as an integer value is the dictionary key, that's super fast, right? And then the value associated with that might be the dealer's card, right? And then what you'd store there could be another thing, right? We could store another dictionary inside of that. So we could have a dictionary of dictionaries with this and then some results. Right? You got lots of options, right? Again, we're going to consider performance, because running this 100,000 times, if we're not doing it very quickly, very performantly, it's going to be real slow. Okay? That makes sense, Sammy? Again, we can set up a time to meet individually too if you want to chat about specifics. I'm happy to take a look and see. As specific or detailed as you want to get. So the idea is we use that strategy sheet to run 100,000 times and see if we make any money. See how we do. That's kind of our baseline. You could then try, let's just try the one from Wikipedia. Let's have this be our strategy sheet, because our simulation might have come up with something slightly different. Sure, so if we have a 13 and the dealer has a 6, maybe our simulation said we should hit more often than stand. Sure, let's try it and see. So what we do is we compare, after we run 100,000, see how much money we have left. Do we gain money? Do we lose money? So that's one easy one. Another way of doing that, maybe we might say, hey, let's count cards. Right, and this card counting idea that when there are more 10s in the deck, then I am more likely to get a blackjack. Right? If there's more little cards in the deck, if there's been a bunch of 10s played, then I'm more likely to get little cards, and I'm not likely to get a blackjack, and the hits or miss are a little more random. So we're going to try 2 different strategies. Whether or not you could just bet differently, say, okay, if I think the count is in my favor, I'm just going to bet more, or if the that kind of goes in hand there, or you could use another odds sheet and just compare with our baseline. What do we get? Okay. And we can see what our best results is. So you'll probably get the best results from counting and varying your bet. It's not a guaranteed win, but the math says we can get about a 2% edge, right, if we follow this. That's the house edge. Where do we get our edge here? Card counting. I thought it said somewhere in here like a 2% edge. Yeah, you can, when you card count, you can get maybe a 2% edge over the house. So maybe you're likely to win 2% more than lose, which is pretty good, actually. Right? The basic strategy, you're losing, or the house has an edge of, about 1% or so, maybe a little less. Okay, but the counting is a slightly more advanced process. So it's not just, hey, if this is my value, I hit or stand. It's this is my value. If the count is this, I hit, or if the count is this, I stand, rather than just always hit or always stand. Okay. No questions are great, for sure. Is the betting aspect? Yeah, you just bet $1 every time. Sure, that's fine. Or if you want to try the variance, you could say, hey, I want to bet $10. Because the more you bet, the more money you make back. And the idea is that the count is going to change throughout these simulations because we only have 6 decks of cards. Right? We start with 6 decks, and when we get to 52 or less, we're going to reshuffle. So we can start counting to see, okay, are there more 10s left, more big cards left, or more small cards left? And it's got a section about counting here. So a lot of the time, right, if there are many aces and 10s left, you're more likely to get a blackjack. Right? You double down more often. Again, we're skipping the double down, so don't worry too much about that. But a common way you'll say, hey, if we see a small card, you get a point. If it's a medium card, we don't care. And if it's a -1 for the 10s and aces. So a higher count value here means that there are more of these in the deck because we haven't seen as many. Right? The more of these we see, that means the less of them are left in the deck. And our card counting could be super specific, or it could just be general like this with buckets. And usually it's buckets here because that's easier for people to do in their head. Not very many people can track, hey, how many 2s, how many 3s, how many 4s, how many 5s explicitly. Our computer can if we want to. Right? The computer's good at that sort of thing, but that'll get you kicked out of the casino. Right? It is legal and not cheating as long as you're not using an external device. Although they might make you leave anyway. So. I think there was a story about a bunch of students from MIT who went to a casino or something like that. I forget. Or maybe it's just a myth. Whoa, emote. Holy cow, what just happened? I don't know what just happened there. I did this thing in Stream Elements to like do an emote something or other. That was nuts. Did someone put an emote in the chat, or is that just for fun? Okay, if you do one emote, it shows up on the screen. That's fun. I don't know what that was. Emote storm or something. That was fun. I just started using Stream Elements yesterday. Oh, it's because you followed? Oh, I didn't know I had alerts set up there. You mean you weren't following me before, Scott? I'm so sad. What is that, Sam? Smeagol? Oh, okay. It's creepy. All right. Oh, I think that's all I've got for today. We can send a raid off to somebody else if we're so inclined and see who else is around here in a second. Let me see how I do that. Yeah, I got to log back in here. So we'll see who's around, see who we can go pester. And we'll have some fun. It's been a great semester. I appreciate you bearing with me. I know it's not the ideal. It's not been our normal. And, I'm sorry for that. Oh, Good Education's gone. Let's go bother my friend Decaf Jedi. He's not an educational streamer, but he is a poli-sci professor, and he teaches a course on the politics of games, which I'm super excited about. I'm not actually in it or anything, but it just sounds super cool. So we'll go bother him totally for fun, not even educational, but we'll have some fun there. All right, so I'll see you over there. We'll all say hi. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a great semester. Keep in touch. Let me know what I can do to support you, to get you finished with this project. And again, your final project score can replace your worst project score. So do let me know if you have any concerns with your grades, and we'll go from there. It's been a pleasure. You folks take care.